Good morning. So I can see a lot of backbenchers who are being very shifty at the back because it's dark and they think nobody can see them, but you still can be seen. So I'd request all of you to settle down because, after an inspiring morning session, this is the time to maintain that inspiration and take it to the world of work, business, industry, value creation that I'm sure all of you are very seriously committed to. Can I request the managers to close the door? And if I just want a little bit of peace, since we've been discussing peace and being calm. Thank you for your attention. This session, we are going to talk to three titans of the industry in their own right, as well as the heads of corporations they represent. But before that, I must congratulate young Indians. I've been coming and attending some of the conferences of young Indians for the last 10 years, and this is one of the best that I have seen. The opening was so creative. And I really congratulate you. And I can tell you that my colleagues and panelists are equally inspired to see how young Indians are really showing the way for some of these very, very boring conferences one attends. I tend to attend a lot of conferences in India and globally, but I think the way you approached this is very fascinating and very inspiring. We want to talk about believing in the India story. We want to talk about why we should take pride. There are a lot of reasons for us to take pride, but there are also reasons for us to work towards creating more reasons to take pride. I'm going to request my colleagues, Bhaskar Pramanik, who is Chairman of Microsoft Corporation, Ravneet Gill, who is CEO of Deutsche Bank in India, as well as Siraj Chaudhary, who is the CEO of Cargill, to speak about their experiences. They have spent a lifetime in technology, in agriculture, as well as finance sectors, and to step out of their roles, not just as the CEOs, but also individuals who've devoted a lifetime to working for what they believe in. I'm going to begin with Bhaskar. Bhaskar, there is a lot that India has learned from the technology sector, and I think thanks to the contribution of the sector, India brought its self-esteem to a new level. Some rightfully and some still needs to be done. But tell us a little bit about how you see technology's role in India to make India stronger and more reasons for us to be proud.
Sure. So I think the last 2 decades has clearly showed that technology is going to play a bigger and more important part of our lives. And I think the space at which we are embracing this is really wonderful to see. In all my travels, wherever I go, whether it's abroad or in India, a couple of things stand out. Number one is that the technology savvy of the Indian population, and I'm not just talking about the youth, I'm talking about all ages, I'm talking about all segments of society. For them, technology is something which they take for granted and which they take very naturally. And this is not something which has happened in the short term. It's actually been very evident for over the last 10 years. The second, I think, is really the fact that we are constantly continuing to build the network infrastructure on top of the physical infrastructure. And I think especially with the current government, the pace at which this is growing is again heartwarming to see. Just 2 weeks ago, I was at the Reliance Geo Experience Center in Vashi, and they were showing and demonstrating the capability of getting 100 Mbps bandwidth on a mobile phone. I'm not talking about broadband, I'm talking about on a phone. So technology and infrastructure is growing at a massive pace. If you think about the Industrial Revolution, we are now what is called the 4th Industrial Revolution, and in the 4th Industrial Revolution, data is going to drive the economy. Data is not just going to transform businesses, but data is also going to have a huge impact on the citizen of India, whether it is for financial inclusion, whether it is for education, whether it is for healthcare, whether it is for agriculture. It's going to be, getting into all factors of life, all aspects of life. Microsoft, for example, we have set up 3 huge data centers here in India. We were the first off the ground when the government of India talked about a Make in India campaign. And these 3 data centers which we have set up have more servers, more computing, more networks and storage capacity than the government of India, both central and state government together. The promise which we have made is to provide infinite computing and networking to every citizen and to every business, every small and medium enterprise. And that's part of the 4th industrial revolution. Data is going to drive the transformation, and we're seeing it. The third, I think, aspect which I see is the startup ecosystem. Again, in my travels, the kind of companies I see who are building solutions, not just for citizens, but also for small, medium enterprises and even for larger businesses. And the kinds of areas that they're focusing on is how can we empower our customers? How can we help engage better with our consumers? How can we help transform our businesses using the Internet of Things? How can we use data much more for analytics and decision making? And in the process of doing that, they're helping companies to transform their business. I'd like to give just one example, if I may, and it's a small company called iBot. iBot worked with Eureka Forbes so that you buy Eureka Forbes water purifier. What they've done is to make those water purifiers intelligent. So now you don't buy a water purifier, you buy clean water, drinkable water, and you pay for the water you drink, not for the actual purifier. And with that, they can also actually look at the consumption patterns across India. They can actually look at how it can provide better service. And I think the last, I have to give credit to the government of India, because the government of India is now ensuring that we provide technology as an enabler to enable our citizens. In the past, e-governance was about making the government efficient. Today, Digital India is about empowering the citizen. So I have great belief that this acceleration, this pace is going to go even faster.
Thanks, Bhaskar. I think one of the key questions one would have on the 4th industrial revolution, which is going to impact everybody, is one, what is going to be India's contribution to it? Second is, how will India be impacted by it? How will we cope with it? And finally, how well we'll be able to leverage it for our good, because there is, it's a double edge. We can be seriously damaged by it also, but I'll come back to that a little later. Ravneet, on the financial services, there's a lot for us to be proud about. Give us a sense of where we are and your experience in the world of finance. It's not always visible, but I think India is much better off thanks to the innovation in financial policy as well as financial products by companies like yours and individuals like yours.
So I think, I'll provide a perspective that doesn't often get appreciated, and which is that if you go back to about 30-35 years and China and India were embarking on their development journeys, China's view was that if you develop physical infrastructure, growth will follow. And India took the path that if you build a world-class financial services system, growth will follow. And sometimes I do believe that India's financial services system doesn't get the credit that is actually due to that. So let me put that into context in terms of data points which you may find it easier to relate to. You had the Asian crisis in 96-97. India came out of it unscathed. In 2008, you had the financial crisis which crippled the world. India came out of it unscathed. It is a very uncharitable thing to say that India was a closed market and to that extent avoided those pitfalls. I think it was a combination of factors. We had a very enlightened regulator. You keep hearing about the difference of opinions occasionally between the Ministry of Finance and the Reserve Bank of India. I think it's a great testament to India's maturity as a polity and as an economy that none of them try to outweigh the other. And we have overall built a system where the application of credit and the overall health of the financial services system is in reasonably good shape. So what happens is that if you look at it purely from the point of view of the rearview mirror and recent events, there's plenty to be critical about, and I think much of that criticism is justified. But it's not as if that, a lot of the problems of the financial services system right now are due to poor governance or, inefficient management or political interference. I mean, it's a combination of factors. And for us to be able to, appreciate just the magnitude of that issue is this whole thing about India moving from being a services economy to be a manufacturing economy. The question that I have for each of you is, please tell me about one large economy in the world which has gone from services to manufacturing. Every large economy that you see, you can see the US, you can see Japan, you can see China, were all very large manufacturing economies which are now beginning to go to services. So the path that India is currently embarking upon doesn't have a defined road ahead. I mean, there are no markers that you can put to see how well that journey is going. And I think it's a very tough journey. And the second thing is that when people talk about Make in India, one aspect which doesn't get enough attention is who will fund the Make in India. At the end of the day, Make in India is not about putting up industry there, it's not putting up factories over there. It's the whole ecosystem. It's in terms of transportation, logistics, cold storage, roads, etc. All of that. Where will that come from? So currently, if you look at it, India's credit to GDP is 59%. The credit to GDP for China is 193%. Now, even if you decide to see China at this point in time as an outlier, let's look at the large manufacturing economies which are there in Asia. You can take Korea, you can take Taiwan, you can take Malaysia. All of them are in the 130s, and you're at 59. Where will that credit expansion, that monetary expansion really come from? It'll come from the banking system. So even though right now, if you look at the non-performing assets, which you read about on the front pages of the newspapers on a daily basis, you talk about the need to recapitalize Indian banks and a lot of the related themes. I still feel that the best days of Indian banking are really ahead of it. I mean, just think of the expansion that will happen from 59 to, let's say, 100 if we really need to become a large manufacturing base, which is clearly the aspiration of the current government. So I think plenty for the country as a whole to take pride in terms of the stability, the depth, the way it is monitored in terms of the overall financial services system. There are clear challenges. Some of those challenges of our own making, and some of those because we are going through a very difficult, very challenging structural transformation. So again, if you look at it from the point of view of the government, 80-85% of Indian banking is still controlled by the government, and for the government, thing is that the consumer must benefit. So unlike a lot of other jurisdictions, and this will come as a surprise to you, the entire diffusion of technology into Indian banking will happen a lot quicker than it will happen anywhere else in the world.
So Ravneet, if I could just ask you one quick thing, what is it about Indian financial services sector that we should be proud about, but we don't realize it?
I think the fact that it has kept the country stable. It's
True.
easy to think in 2008 what happened.
It's a boring world of finance and macroeconomics, which all of us think that we take it for granted. But you're right, absolutely right. And also you must give credit to the private Indian banks who are smart enough to make sure that they don't have willful defaulters to the level that some of the public sector banks are. But that's really a factor of management and independence.
I will here. Also hold out a case for the public sector banks. I think if you see a lot of the non-performing assets right now were not bad judgment or not silly management. I mean, the policy flip-flops we have had over a period of time,
Sure.
in terms of concession agreements, in terms of tolls, etc., I think has had a big role to play. And then for the system to still remain relatively stable, I think deserves a lot of credit.
It's a big effort that has been made. I want to also talk about, I'm sure everybody wants to talk about crony capitalism at some point as well, because that's a subject that gets our backs up. But for the moment, making in India, the best thing that we want to do is making money in India, and that seems to be something that all of us seem to be doing, and that's not just for investors, but for individuals as well. But, and coming to Siraj on this, who heads Cargill, is that we don't take pride in making food in India. We've been using foreign imported fruits and vegetables for the last few years in the country, and most of the markets in the cities that we live in tend to have that. Siraj, why is it that we don't take pride in agriculture in India? What has gone wrong?
Thanks, Pranjal. I think Indian agriculture historically has been a tripartite relationship between God, government, and the farmer. So the general population has been kept out of it. Of course, farmers are a population. And the tragedy has been that God obviously treats us, rewards or punishes us based on our performance. And if last 2 years are any evidence, then he is certainly not very happy.
So you're saying that agriculture still depends on divine help and not on human intervention?
When you have 70 to 80% agriculture dependent on irrigation, a lot of lives are depending on God's mercy. And we are not helping our cause by all the issues that you're hearing on climate change. The second big component in that relationship is the government. That's a sector which has, where the government has always stood inside as the protector of the farmer interest and therefore kept the industry out. Now, there's a historical reason for that. I don't know how many of this generation have seen it, but historically, if you look at the old Hindi movies, the exploiter of the farmer was the village sahukar. So he was always, so the trade, which today has evolved to be the industry, was seen as the exploiter of the farmer, and therefore the government stepped in to protect the farmer from the trade. And I think that mindset has continued over a very long time.
And this is strange, because agriculture is the biggest private sector in the country.
Yeah, but it's always been, the government has taken upon itself to protect the farmer. It has not probably accepted the evolution of trade to industry. And the industry is important because when the big industry comes in, and when I say big industry, I say more organized sector comes in, that is when you have the opportunity to get the technology in, you have the opportunity to get the financing in, and you know, both people on my left and right actually have a role to play in making agriculture bigger and better. Now, India's, while I talk of what has not worked, what has certainly worked is that India has, you know, and keeping pace with the growth in population, growth in incomes, and one of the big sort of fallouts of increase in income is that the first manifestation of prosperity actually comes through the food that we eat. If you look at the food pyramid, we move from carbohydrates to proteins to better foods, and that is where I think today the challenge is. So it is not about India not being sufficient in wheat and rice. Of course, pulses is a problem and edible oils is a problem, but then you're moving from carbohydrates, which is wheat and rice, to pulses and oils, which are moving to proteins. And I think, and then of course the horticulture piece, which is the fruits and vegetables. So I think moving the agriculture sector from base to where you know, the growing population is demanding the kind of food they're demanding is the challenge and the opportunity today for the industry to step in. And it is important for the government to recognize it, that the industry today is very different from the traders of 50 years ago. And I think that's the change. I mean, we are today, you know, seeing a modern India which is not more than 70 years old, but it draws a lot of its inspiration from 4,000 years of, you know, culture and philosophical
Do you think there is scope for introspection for all of us here in this hall, that we get more excited about a global food chain launching in India than about a new variety of wheat being developed?
Yes, see, we have problems at two levels. One is that we still have a situation where not everyone is getting food. So there's a certain part of the population which needs food. We are addressing hunger and nutrition. And the next level, and you have another level which is today, you know, addressing tastes and nutrition and healthy eating, and bridging that, and you know, being able to straddle both the worlds is the challenge that we face today. And an opportunity, I think, is today in both the spaces. We need the industry. We need the young people today to be getting involved with rural India. And agriculture is not just about cultivation, it's about the whole rural economy. And if India has to become a global powerhouse, it will depend on how effectively we combine the rural and the urban worlds in India. And I think that's where this audience has to find a role for itself.
Thanks. One of the thoughts which comes through, and I referred to it earlier, is that while there is a strong spirit of entrepreneurship and startups, it seems to be limited to only the technology sector. So if you go beyond the technology sector, where are the startups? I'm not sure whether there are enough data points on that, Bhaskar. And Ravneet, please step in if you have any thoughts. But the fact is that startups are synonymous with technology. Why is it that we can't look at entrepreneurship beyond technology today? Why are we not proud of entrepreneurship in other sectors?
So let me just answer that question. So first of all, I think technology is too important to be left to the technologists. And I think what I've seen over the last decade is that technology is permeating every single sector of the industry, whether it is the mature economy or whether it's the startups themselves. So if you think about the retail, it's all e-commerce based, and we all know what's happening there. If you look at even traditional companies like Eureka Forbes, they're redefining their business model. So technology is actually the enabler now for everybody, including the government. To me, the next killer app on your mobile phone are going to be e-government applications, something which helps you to communicate with the government a lot better. I see that also happen in agriculture. We are seeing many startups coming to us where they want to focus on how they can help agriculture. I see a lot of startups in the healthcare, and they're going to redefine the way healthcare is going to be done in this industry. So technology happens to be the enabler. The business model is pure industry, including finance.
Ravneet, do you want to step in on this?
Yeah, I think, Bhaskar made the right point that today if you look at businesses and how businesses are getting redefined, given the fact that the world has become much more competitive, much more efficient, I really think that if you don't apply technology to it, you'll never be able to remain competitive, remain relevant, remain viable. So we talked about the Industrial Revolution 4.0. That was around the internet. So if you go back to the Hanover Fair, which happened last year, and where they unveiled this entire initiative, was around the internet. So I think if you look at supply chains, you look at warehousing, you look at just-in-time, I think without the application of technology, the efficiency that you need to survive and to thrive in today's world just don't exist. So it's not so much the fact that everything is technology related, but the fact, like Bhaskar very rightly said, that technology has now become the enabler for a lot of these businesses to grow and to prosper.
Siraj, I want to talk about entrepreneurship, but when we look at believing in India, the sense that India has of everybody, I'm sure a lot of you are entrepreneurs here or who want to be entrepreneurs, and that's the younger generation. The older one are tarred by the fact of crony capitalism, and I'd like both of you also to come in on this. What is the way ahead for India if we want to believe in India, if we want to believe in Indian enterprise, and if we want to believe in Indian industry? What is the responsibility of business leaders to be more responsible, to be more ethical? And do you think that we would see a slightly more informed, responsible industry in the future? Because while it has achieved a lot, I can say independently that a lot of the industry leaders are not seen and respected the way they should be.
Yes, Pranjal, I think it's for industry to gain more credibility. There is still a long way for the industry to go in building trust with the society. And I think that's the important piece. I think this audience again is going to be responsible for. And we as a generation have seen this, I call ourselves the 80s and the 90s people who were lucky to be on that cusp of liberalization and benefited from that era. But where we stand today, I think it's really, if the industry has to play a larger role in the affairs of the country, they will have to build trust with the society. And I think also it's, talking in cricket parlance, I think India is still a lot about playing a 5-day test where you do have your challenges. So it's not about coming in and batting for 20 overs, but it's really about being able to face the turning pitches and using good footwork to do that, face the seam. You will have wrong umpiring decisions, but you do have a second inning. So it is really about seeing it as something which will take time. We will not get instant solutions, and that patience while the youth is a lot more impatient, but I think it has to be a combination of being able to play a 5-day test with the agility of a 2020, where you require good running between the wickets and sharp fielding. And I think combining those two is going to be essential.
Yeah, Bhaskar, I'll come to you, but I just want to share one fact with everybody. I don't know if you know, but there was a study and a survey done that in 1914, if you look at the companies that were started there, the average age of a company would be over 60 years. Today, the average age of a company is just about 18 years. So it doesn't mean that they become younger, it just means that they close much faster. They either get shut down or they get acquired or they don't exist anymore. And that pace of closure is going to increase partly because of what you said, that the new models being created for business using technology today means that all the legacy players may not exist in the next 5 to 10 years. Many of them would just wither away. Bhaskar?
Yeah, so I agree, but before I answer that specifically, I just wanted to add to what Shiraz has talked about, because I think that's one of the things which is really important, building trust. I think this is one of the key ingredients to India's success. And I think technology is one of the challenges. In fact, if you live in a world of Stonehenge emotions, medieval institutions,
I like that phrase,
and godlike technology, then you can create more chaos than order. And that's why, as a company, we believe, as an industry, we believe that as technology advances, values must persist. And this, to me, is one of the messages I'd like to leave with you, is that we now live in a society where corporates have a very critical and important role, especially here in India, in making sure that we bring everybody up at the same time, financially, digitally, economically. And that is a responsibility, and that's one of the responsibilities which you will bear, technology or no technology. But our values must endure.
No, but the reason I wanted to bring the issue of trust with the survival of companies is that the old way of doing business, that if you knew the right people in the right places, you had a safe business. That does not exist. Plus, bring in the disruption from technology.
I don't agree. I think technology enables you to become much more customer obsessed. I think technology enables you to empower your workforce. I think technology helps you to create different business models. But an organization is an organization, and whether it is the Tatas, whether it is the Godrej, or whether it is the Aditya Birla Group, they have shown that irrespective of the industry they're in, their values persist. Irrespective of the new businesses they bring in, their values persist. And therefore, the ones which will survive are not necessarily the ones, obviously you have to have a good bottom line, but I think the ones who will persist are the ones which actually create that trust. And technology can enable, but it's not the only ingredient.
That's a good point. Ravneet, do you want to come in on this thought?
Yeah, again, I think
trust and technology, what is going to define new age companies?
I think the most obvious and the largest manifestation of trust in technology is this whole push on e-governance. And they believe that, e-governance will ensure there's greater transparency and everything gets audited. And to that extent, decisions get made on merit and, in the best interest of the country. But I think overall, if you look at the way the whole axis has shifted, 18 months back, whenever I went overseas, the starting point of any discussion around India was on corruption. This scandal, that payoff, this act of corruption here, that act of corruption. Funny thing is, 18 months later, nobody talks about it. And you had years and years of crony capitalism, and I think every economy goes through that phase at some point or time or the other. But in 18 months, you've been able to, draw a line and get beyond it. I mean, does that mean that crony capitalism is finished altogether? Potentially not. But it's no longer a talking point. So with or without technology, I think every business needed to rewrite its contract with society and rebuild that trust. It didn't matter which sector you were in. And I think that's a process which is a cleansing that we have to go through and which will hold industry and the country in much better stead.
So I think, one of the thoughts before I don't, if we have about 15 minutes left, so I'd like to take in some thoughts and questions from the audience. two things that will define the success of companies and entrepreneurship in the future is how much of trust and technology they deploy in what they do. And if they have the right balance and enough of it, I think they're likely to be doing much better than just looking at a business plan. But let me take in a few questions from the audience. If there is light,
could we turn the lights on the audience, please? We're going to have one mic. I'm going to walk around with this one mic.
And if you can keep it brief, it'll allow me to take more questions. If you go to hog everything, then that's a monopoly situation we don't want to encourage. Do introduce yourself and give us a very pointed thoughts. I'll collect 2 or 3 points and then I'll come to the panel.
Utkarsh from Ahmedabad. My question is to Ravneet sir. You were talking about the finance and the new credit policies which are being implemented in the country. Recently we have seen the implementation of Mudra Bank as well as the new bank which is being, the international bank being set up by the BRICS nations. So what are your views, how all these things are going to help the SME sector of this country?
He's going to have to write a book to answer all those questions, but I'll come to him for a 30-second answer. Any more hands? I'm sorry,
Could we have the lights on in the audience, please? The speakers can't see the audience. We're going to move this side very quickly. Yeah.
Hi, this is Anirudh Mathur from Daikin. I had a question for the panel. Simply, there is a spirit of optimism in this economy that has come in. How do you sustain that spirit? What role does the industry play in it? What role does the industry expect the government to play in it?
Excellent. Finally, we have time for one more question.
We're going to hand the mic to this gentleman.
मेरा नाम सत्यप्रकाश है. मैं मीडिया की एडवर्टाइजिंग पार्ट से संपर्क रखता हूँ
जी.
बेसिकली मैं किसान हूँ, तो हमें छोटी छोटी इंडस्ट्रीज जो हमने लगाई हैं अपने गांव में, हमें ना फाइनेंस पे, ना टेक्नोलॉजी पे, ना एजुकेशन पे, ना स्टाफ पे हमें कहीं कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं आती. हमें जो भी प्रॉब्लम आती है जब गवर्नमेंट की बनाई हुई पॉलिसीज का और वहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट द्वारा नियुक्त करे गए एम्प्लॉय हैं वो वहाँ नहीं मिलते और हमें चक्कर काटने पड़ते हैं. तो यदि हम कर देते हैं तो हमें दंडित करते हैं, और यदि हम नहीं करते हैं तो सफर करते हैं, हमारे गांव का डेवलपमेंट नहीं होता. तो पैनल के पास क्या कोई ऐसा सजेशन है कि गवर्नमेंट जो प्रैक्टिकल अनाउंसमेंट करती है उसको प्रैक्टिकल रूप वहाँ दे दे, ताकि टेक प्राइड का स्वरूप और यहाँ इस पूरे हॉल में जो हम सब लोग बैठे हैं इस भारत को महत्वपूर्ण तरीके से आगे बढ़ाने में महत्वपूर्ण योगदान दे सके.
बहुत अच्छा सवाल है आपका, थैंक यू वेरी मच. आपने छोटा सवाल किया लेकिन इसका जवाब बहुत बड़ा है, लेकिन इसका अगर हमारे पास पूरा जवाब होता तो हम लोग और पूरा देश बहुत कहीं और होता. लेकिन ये मुद्दा भास्कर ने भी उठाया था, बट let me come back and ask the panelists to react to all of this, perhaps beginning with you, Ravneet, on banking, and if you'd like to refer to the issue of optimism and government delivery as well.
So I think, for starters, to come to the first question, when you look at the various segments of society, when you look at various vectors of industry, you can't have the same approach in terms of financing each one of them. So how you fund the large caps, how you fund the multinationals, how you fund the mid caps, how you fund the small and medium enterprises takes a different skill set. It takes a very different mindset as well. One of the things that Reserve Bank of India is now doing in conjunction with the Ministry of Finance is to have more differentiated banking licenses. So they believe that if you have a certain capability, a certain skill set, so for instance, you're very good at agricultural finance, they will give you a license to do just agricultural financing. If you believe that because of, you own subscribers and you own technology like a telecom company, and you could, process payments in a much more efficient fashion, in a much more cost-effective fashion, then they'll give you a payments bank license. So I think what is happening now really is that the government has become cognizant of this, that the various segments of the economy need a very specialized finance. And if you talk in terms of Make in India, the thread that runs through Make in India is employment generation. Now you could set up a 5 million ton steel plant with 300 people. So that industry per se doesn't generate employment. You need to look at those segments of industry which create employment. So if you look at Germany, which is the hallmark of a manufacturing DNA and a very strong industrial base, it's all the middle stand, which is the mid caps. So I think what the government is doing with regard to the Mudra Bank or the payment banks, etc., I think is exactly the right thing. A bank which has, let's say, 10 branches in the country, will find it very difficult to fund agriculture. But there are regional banks, there are rural banks, there are agricultural, focused banks which are able to provide that. So I think what's happening is exactly the right approach. To talk about how to, maintain the optimism, I have a very simple point to make with respect to that. What is ailing the West? What is ailing the West is that there is no demand. Now the problem is that because those are aging societies, those are silvering societies. Question is, there is nothing you can do to solve demand. What is the problem in India? In India, the problem is supply side. You fix supply side, you can grow at 8.5%, 9%. So supply side you can fix, demand you can't fix. In India, it is just a question of supply side. There is no dearth of demand. And that's the demographic dividend that even the Guruji talked about. And I really think that in itself should give us, hope and optimism that, we can continue to grow at very high rates of growth for the foreseeable future.
That's a good reason to be optimistic. Thanks, Ravneet. They have the products and the services. They don't have the people to buy them. We have the people to buy. They're ready, but perhaps we don't have the kind of supply as you said very well. But I think we also need to create more consumers. We don't have enough consumers because a lot of people still are out of the mainstream. They are not even able to earn a decent living. Siraj.
Yes, Pranjal. Currently, what we're talking about. Consumption slowdown in India is actually directly to a large extent related to rural distress, which has been brought about by the 2 years of failed agriculture. And just to put it in statistics, by our own estimates, in the last 2 years, India has lost about 30 to 40 million tons of crop due to bad climatic conditions, and which means that 30 to 40 million tons of crop wasn't converted into money, and that money did not come into consumption. And so there is a correlation between lifting rural economies and getting the consumption up, which is what India's strength is. I would like to address the question of the gentleman there. So while we talk about the headline corruption going away, or at least not getting today, people facing less of it, it is not so clear or cleaned out at the bottom level. We are still, I can fully empathize with what the gentleman said, because at the lower level, there is this challenge of facing corruption in our day-to-day lives. And the people who face it the most are the small entrepreneurs in the rural areas. And I think that's where technology, where the simplification of processes, the applications, the e-applications are going to be helpful. But somewhere it has to come from ourselves. And I'm going to share a personal example here. As a multinational, one of the discussions we have in our peer group is that apart from money, the currency to succeed in India is patience. Because you will have to be patient to get over some of the problems. And we recently, as Cargill, set up a big investment in Karnataka, a $100 million plant for processing corn, which is right in the middle of rural Karnataka. And we had made it very clear, and as an American company, that there can be no scope for bribe there. And the reality is that I can very proudly say with my hand on my heart that we built that plant, it's operational now, and we did not have to pay a single penny as bribe, right from buying land from the farmers to getting it converted. And that was because we have taken a stand that irrespective of what happens, we will not succumb to pressure. And I asked the guy who runs that operations for me is a Dutch guy, and I asked him that if we were a local company and we did the same thing, how much longer would it have taken us to build this plant? And the answer was probably a month longer. So you can say it didn't require us to wait out a lot, but I think we will have to stand up for what we believe in. Thank you.
Bhaskar, thank you so much, Siraj.
Okay, so I'm a lot older than most of the guys on the panel here. I like
only chronologically.
Yeah, I like to call myself the generation which was just the decade after independence. And so therefore for me, what I see here in India is completely different from my childhood. And I was very fortunate childhood because my father was a service officer. The point I just want to make is that, and this was again triggered sometime in October last year when I was in hospital for about 2 weeks. And I got a time to reflect as to what exactly has my generation done for India. And I was trying to struggle with what that is. And I was reading a book by Neil Ferguson, which talks about how the West beats the East. And he talks about the 5 killer apps which help the West grow much faster than the East over the course of the last 200 years. And I think my generation actually has helped reverse that trend. And not only did we take those killer apps and make them relevant in India, but I think beyond that, we've now started creating the next set of killer apps where we are ahead of the West. And that, to me, is what is the legacy we're going to leave all of you, because you're going to have to understand that it is not the government which is going to make a difference in our lives. It's us, ourselves. It's going to be entrepreneurs. The small and medium enterprise in India, the unorganized sector employs more people than the organized sector. It actually provides more than 40% of the GDP, and I'm not even including agriculture. So I think we have to understand is the government, like technology, is an enabler, but we have started to build those killer apps which will take India back to where it was 200 years ago. So just the message I'd like to leave with you.
Thanks, Bhaskar. And you know, we already have a killer app. And we have this app which is written right behind me, We Can and We Will app, which lies in all of us. And I think that's going to make sure that we are ahead of everybody in the decades to come. Thank you very much for joining us for this session. Thank you.
We're going to have to request all the speakers to kindly stay on stage. I'm going to have to request Mr. Kumar Guru to kindly step on stage with us. Ladies and gentlemen, as a thank you from our side, we'd like to give them a little something. Mr. Bhaskar Pramanik, this is a little something from us to you. CEO India, Microsoft, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for them. Mr. Ravneet Gill, CEO India, Deutsche Bank. A big round of applause for him, please. Siraj A. Chaudhary, Chairman, Cargill India. Clap for him, ladies and gentlemen. And finally, last but not the least, Mr. Pranjal Sharma, the host, ladies and gentlemen, because he's the consulting editor for Business World and host the Appointment Z Network. Thank you.